Hello and welcome to episode 12 of So Good We Named It, the first Golden Girls and Golden Palace podcast in existence, and the first, to my knowledge, Golden Girls or Golden Palace podcast with Black hosts. I'm Barrett, and today we have a very special guest, the winner of our recent contest to pick an episode for us to review. Would you like to introduce yourself and plug anything you may have out there?
Oh, I am truly honored. Hi, Barrett. My name is Leah. I live in Seattle, Washington. I don't have anything to plug, although I will join you in promoting the Golden Girls convention happening in April in Chicago. I will be there with my fellow Butter
Oh,
Queens.
well, that's exciting. Are you going to be in any type of character ensemble that you'd like to share?
TBD, I'm not going to share it, but we are going to. I have floated the idea of a group costume. It's all a matter of, getting things procured by then. How about yourself?
I did just today decide on something, which will also be a surprise because I was just going to wear regular clothes. I have many Golden Girls shirts and things like that. But then I kept seeing people say that they were going to dress up. And then Katrina, who guest co hosted last week, by the way, Kay's not here if no one didn't notice. We're doing some rotating panels right now. But she said they're going to do, she and her sisters, the Henny Penny costumes. So I was like, well, I can't be showed up by people because, I've won contest dressed as Dorothy before
You
more than
have.
once. And then I've dressed up like the rest of them just for YouTube videos. But I thought, oh, well, am I going to want to do that? But if everyone else is. So I want to do something that's a little more, you have to be a real fan to know what
Real
I'm
heads
doing.
only.
So I'm trying to decide, do I want a different outfit every day or just one day? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. I have an outfit picked out for the Mother of a Solid Gold Dancer disco, and that'll be lots of fun. The group costume I was thinking about is similar in which, like, only real fans are going to get it.
Well, I
So,
am very excited to meet you and see this in person and get all the pictures and everything. And I must say, your aesthetic matches your picture of Daphne very well. Like, I feel like you're channeling her a little bit.
um, yeah, I have often been compared to either Daphne or Velma or a Daphne Velma hybrid. And it's so strange is whenever I go to the airport, I get a lot of Scooby-Doo references.
Really?
Yeah,
Maybe
I don't
because
know
of the
what.
movie, the live action one, they had a big airport scene. Maybe that's what it is. But I was Velma once for Halloween, and people kept saying, "Hey, Daphne." I'm like, no, I'm clearly Velma. Hello, I put a lot into this. Uh,
And yeah, it seems like wherever I go, Velma is the only like feminine Scooby Doo character people know because they call me Velma and say jinkies at me. I'm like, first of all, it's Daphne, and second, Daphne's catchphrase was Jeepers.
that I did not know, but I actually am I don't want to say closeted, but I'm a big Scooby Doo fan, but most people wouldn't know that, even people I know in real life. So if I ever want to do a Scooby Doo podcast, hopefully you would like to join at some point to give your take.
Sign me up.
Sounds good. So the episode that you chose, The Case of the Libertine Bell, which I think is the highest rated Golden Girls episode on IMDb, which is odd. I love the episode, but I'm like, this of all episodes are not even in the house hardly. What is it that you think makes people love it so much?
It's a curious one, and to be fair, it's not even my personal favorite. I was going for popularity, but one thing that's unique about it, it is a very specific genre. Two, it's one of few, if any, episodes that only has one story. It doesn't have the A story and the B
That's
story.
true. I didn't even notice that. I was so wrapped up
Yeah,
in this.
right, right. And there's a lot there. There are a lot of great lines. My favorite line of the series, it's just a real passing thing, but that occurs in this episode.
Yeah, and it's the only episode I can think of where there's one short scene at the house and the rest is somewhere else,
Yep, yep.
which is
I
odd.
can't think of another aside from the dreaded empty nest episode.
Let's just not even mention that one. But I feel like today it's nothing for sitcoms to jump from set to set to set. And even back then, maybe a little more. But I feel like this show, they really were only at the house almost all the time, unless they were at the hospital, which happened a lot.
It
But
did.
this
Yeah,
was odd.
it's almost like the house was its own character. Like
It
each
really
room was
was.
its own character. There was so much connected to it.
Maybe I should show up dressed as 5161 Richmond Street. That'll be my costume. I got to see if
Yes.
I can work that in there. But for
I'll
anyone
just
who hasn't
unicorn in
seen,
the vase.
that I would love that too. Maybe some pieces. Let's see. I'm brainstorming now because I had people send suggestions, and I actually am going to go with one of them, maybe
Nice.
two. But for anyone that hasn't seen it, although why are you listening to this if you've never seen that? But that episode basically Blanche is trying to get a promotion, and for some reason, a murder mystery weekend is the key to getting promoted at a museum. I don't know why, but okay, sure, we'll go with that. So I will say, in reference to what you said about it having some good lines, it really does. I didn't realize how many of my favorite lines are from this show until I started watching it. And as Enough Wicker would say, it's a very punchy episode. There's just like joke after joke after joke to where you can almost not keep track in a sense. But one of my favorites is the "Not Now, Ma." That
That's my favorite. That's my
I
favorite.
really have used that gif heavily. I'm in a group chat where there's this one person that always derails the conversation all the time, and they already know if they see me pop up, the "Not Now, Ma" gif is gonna follow whatever they just said. Always relevant. What was another one? You talk like this on first dates, don't you?
Right.
I love
Yep.
that one. Let me review the not part of the show, folks. Not part of the show. And
So, daughters frequently murder their mothers.
also, I feel like they really played that up in season seven. This tea is for my mommy, and then this.
Yep.
Let's see, the Saint Olaf, right? Which they really wore that out in the later seasons. They just kept going for the same joke over and over.
And in this episode in particular, they did that callback. I'm counting four
I
times.
counted four as well. I can let
Mm,
the three slide, but with Dorothy's, I'm like, okay, okay, come on. No
yes.
wonder she said they were running out of ideas and she left the show. One I didn't know was from this episode, which I just said earlier on Twitter, was oh, big news, tear out the front page. I would never have matched that with this episode, oddly enough. But I noticed, based on the conversation in the first scene, was Blanche just getting home from her date with Mel Bushman?
Was just getting home from her date with Mel Bushman, where they got a flat and did you name it, and then she had to plan this murder mystery weekend as part of the museum's annual staff event. And apparently, if she does this well, she will get this promotion that she's really hoping for.
And I love that we've never heard about this annual event. And she's been working
Yeah.
at that museum all these years. And she was so upset when Dorothy started working there and was getting close to her boss. But now she's like, oh, to hell with him. I want to go to Europe with this guy. So where's the allegiance that she once had? But no purse, no nothing. She just walks in the house. I love that red two-piece outfit though. But she just
Oh,
sat down, started eating breakfast. No big deal, I guess. I'm trying to figure out, was that like grits and sausage? I couldn't even tell what they were eating.
I am not sure.
And I feel like whoever cooks, they don't ever get to eat. They just sit on the stool or they stay standing. It's maybe a rotation. Dorothy always eats. She doesn't cook. I don't think I've ever seen Dorothy cook. Maybe once, maybe, but she's always gonna get a plate regardless. And she
Yeah.
actually ate. Usually, B. Arthur just like pushes the food around, but I saw her take a bite, not convincingly, but she did eat it.
Well, she, from what I understand, was kind of a picky eater. It's well known that she did not like cheesecakes, so she would, force it down, being the seasoned actor that she
Right.
is. But it's well known that she did not care for it. And it's rare for them to sit all four of them around a table anyway, because if they do, they're going to be one of them is going to be either facing to the back or they're going to be sitting very awkwardly because of that whole like fourth wall thing.
Right. Yeah, I love how that's one of the fun facts that, were never released. They'll be like, oh, why is there not a fourth chair? Because they'd be having their back to the camera. Well, you don't say. It's
Yeah.
not the biggest fun fact, but I did notice that they were all sitting at the table there, and Rose did have her back to the camera quite a bit, which is odd. Usually they have the typical forced, everybody right on one side thing, but this time they made it look a little more realistic. I appreciated that. And Dorothy's whole little like spiel about these authors, I assume they're authors. I don't even know who they are. I need Matt Browning's book. And she recited that line. Do you know who she's talking about?
I'm looking at Matt Browning's book across the room right now, and I didn't have time to. I'm like you, assuming they're authors, assuming they're actual literary references. I did not have time to look it up today.
This isn't the
Uh,
scholarly podcast. They can go to enough Wicker if they want
they sure
research.
can.
But I
Yeah.
just assume everything's in his book. I just don't want to ruin it, so I don't read it because I want it to stay looking nice. Hopefully, you can't hear that cat who decided to use the litter box in the middle of recording. I can
I did
part with
hear
you,
a
unlike
cat
Mr.
tonight time.
Peepers. But the whole setup seemed a little rushed, and it was odd that she's like, "Oh, can you girls help me? Oh, this would really be a big help." Is that big of an ask to go to a murder mystery weekend that I assume is
Have
probably
additional attendees. Like,
free?
is there not enough staff at the museum?
Yeah, that's odd that you can just invite whoever you want when this is supposed to be a company retreat. But again, sure, we'll go with it. Why not?
It's season
Um,
7. There are no rules
yeah,
anymore.
they knew Dorothy was leaving, so it's like, whatever.
Hmm.
And then we see in the next scene Rose's alleged earrings that I could not imagine Rose wearing, which we see again in the finale. Never worn by Rose, though, worn by Dorothy. And I thought I forgot where they went with that because originally I'm like, wow, they're really harping on this earring thing. But, later on we see why. Anything else from the opening that you wanted to touch on before I keep going?
Uh, Oh, Sophia had a really fun joke. The first joke of the episode. She told Dorothy she had a dream that she was making love with Jay Leno, and Dorothy says, "Oh, that's a strange dream." And Sophia says, "Not really. It was Monday night. He was filling in for Carson."
That was a good one. I did write that down actually now that I see her sleeping with Jay Leno. Just the imagery of that in general. I'm wondering, was he still doing the denim on denim? Like, I don't know what to think about that. And also the champagne picnic. Is that a thing? Do people have picnics entirely for champagne?
I feel like it's kind of a thing, like strawberries and champagne, maybe some cheese wedges,
Perhaps. I
but
mean, they
it's
seem like they were more just sex buddies. So I don't know why
yeah.
he'd be doing all of that.
Yeah,
But,
they seem like a very Netflix and chill for, the 80s and 90s
right.
kind of union.
Like even when she was like, "Oh, I love you, Mel Bushman," he's like, "Nah, let's just keep it casual." But I feel
Yeah,
like whenever they need a random guy to throw in, it's just like, let's just say Mel Bushman, so we don't have to explain anything.
Bushman
Uh,
awaits.
let's see, the Shinola joke. I've heard the expression. I don't know shit from Shinola. I don't even really know what that means, but I assume that's what they were referencing. Isn't that like a watch company? Or
That's another one. I feel so ill prepared.
I
That's
gotta
another
get
one I
that book
look
over
up
here.
today. I have it literally across. Let me
As
just
do
grab
I.
it.
Look, I feel like we might as well just both get our books.
Let's get into it.
Thank you, Matt Browning, for this definitive cultural reference guide. Let me
Thank you,
go to the back and look up Shinola. Let's see. I mean, this is actually extremely handy to have. I
Matt.
don't see Shinola. Oh, it's episode title index I'm in. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So let me go to the references. I guess we are scholarly now.
Look
Let's
at us.
see. I see Schultz. I don't see Shinola, unless I'm not spelling it right.
Mm, I can't think of any other way
Oh,
it
wait,
would
here's
be
another one.
spelled.
Shriner. Okay, there it is. 346 to 347. I feel like I'm back in college. Golden Girls One on One, which would be a great class. I went to school for TV writing and production, and I had a class on the Honeymooners, and I know they had a Seinfeld class, a Simpsons class. So at this point, I hope they have a Golden Girls class.
Oh, I would sign up so fast.
Okay.
Okay, Shinola is a defunct brand of shoe polish founded in 1877 that entered the American lexicon thanks to the phrase, "You don't know shit from Shinola."
Well, what is it that's a watch? There's some type of watch that sounds similar to Shinola. I
Hmm.
don't know what I could be thinking of. I'll have to ask my husband because I know he likes those watches, and I always think of the Golden Girls, and now I don't even know why because it's not what it is. I've walked past that store and been like, "Oh yeah, Golden Girls." Interesting. Well, I did not even know anything about this shoe polish, and that is a very, very dated reference if it was founded in 1877, because I
Indeed.
don't know if it still exists. But thank you, Matt Browning, for explaining that to us. Thank God for this book. Another
Thank
joke that we would not have understood. But I felt like Blanche didn't really get a lot of zingers for this to be all about her.
Oh no, she was kind of the heel in this episode,
Yeah, which is
in
odd.
some ways. Yeah,
She was just there, I guess, to move the story along. I guess they said,
pretty
well, you'll get
much.
Golden Palace. You can get more stories then. Um, what did
I
I
guess so. But I
also
do think
have?
like there were some episodes in which she wasn't exactly heel, but it showed her in a more vulnerable position, and I found that really satisfying.
Hmm.
You know, when she got taken down a notch, and you had to see the real Blanche, the humble Blanche, the
Right.
big-hearted.
And I think that's very true to her character that in the end, she's like, oh, I was in on it too. That's a very Blanche thing to say just to try to
Hmm.
save face at the
Right.
last minute.
Like, no,
Um,
you won't.
I also believe, I may be mistaken, is this Grammy's plantation converted into the hotel, the resort for the murder mystery? Because it
I need
has
to double
the
check
same
that.
staircase, and even the bedroom upstairs is the same one for when they saw Sophia jump off the roof. Because I remember the wall was at an angle where the bed was.
You pointing that out makes me able to picture it. I think you may be onto
They
something.
really got their money's worth out of those sets, I tell you. They were gonna reuse those every which way. Um, and then they have, speaking of reusing, why are the siblings' names Gloria and Philip? They couldn't think of anything else.
Season 7, we quit.
I feel like, in doing this podcast, I've noticed more so how many names they reuse. We know they use sets and actors, but they couldn't even think of new names.
That seems like quite a stretch.
And Candy, the name of the new bride, also the flight attendant. I guess
Hmm.
that's Posey. Now that's a name. I don't know anybody named Posey, so I was excited. I appreciated that. But Gloria number two is wearing Rose's dress from the dance marathon,
Yep.
and I'm like, okay, not only are you reusing this dress, but that was like 5 years ago. Rose never even wore it again. So they were like, we are going to use this dress one day before the
This
show ends.
episode, they're recycling the sets, they're recycling the dress, they're recycling the earrings to show up later. They're
Their carbon
with the
footprint
same
on that
names.
that show, it is very low. What else did I have on here? Um, Dorothy was very smug, I must say. The entire time she was solving that, she was in her element. You don't see this
Ah,
again, I think, until she was at Jeopardy.
yep.
Like she was just like, "Oh yeah, this is me. This is everything that I've been waiting for to showcase my talents."
Yep.
Even
Cutting
though,
down the other
right,
contestants.
this was the one time where it was allowed. I do, to jump ahead a little bit, feel like this whole conceit of Blanche being framed for murder. Now, this is what you would call a patented Trudy McMahon uh, practical joke, as Trudy would say, because this is so outrageous. Someone allegedly died. Someone thinks they killed someone. It's literally the same type of thing, except there's nobody to try to, I guess, acknowledge how terrible it really is. Because in that case, at least she went to apologize to Dorothy and there was a whole thing. But this one, it's like, oh, no big deal. I thought I was going to prison for the rest of my life. Ha ha ha.
It's all in good fun. It's part of the game.
Right, because of the earrings, apparently, and because I want this job. I mean, I don't think I would have been okay with that. I also don't know how realistic it is that you get to have random people jump up and offer their opinions before you're carted off by the police. And this is one of the rare times, I forgot all about Lieutenant Alvarez, where we see a person of color that they don't acknowledge it. They're just another character, which is probably why I don't remember, because usually they have to point it out. The only time they don't, I think, is with the Paisan, brother of the scalp tax guy, that was black. But I didn't realize until I watched it just now, that's the dad from Ugly Betty.
Oh,
He,
I'm not as familiar with Ugly
I'm trying to
Betty.
think what else he was in, and what his name is. I'll have to add it in the notes later. But he's been in a few things. He was on Desperate Housewives,
Okay.
and I didn't even realize because he was so young back then. Very, very good looking man. But he's still acting, to my knowledge. And I feel like there was a lot of police involved. We get the fake PI guy, then we get the second guy that came into the
The
room, and then
hotel
we get this
security.
guy. I'm like, does it usually take this many people to solve something like this? Usually, wouldn't you go to the police station at some point? But again, season seven, anything goes. I do like her nightgown. It didn't even look like a nightgown.
Oh, that was such a splendid ensemble.
It really
Like, what
was. Like, I wish that I had been aware when they auction off Rue McClanahan's costumes because I probably would have bought a nightgown at least.
My
And
gosh.
even Dorothy's was very ornate. It had the lace, the high collar, looks uncomfortable to sleep in,
Hmm.
but definitely luxurious, I must say. And
Definitely great for like lounging around the
right,
house.
you're just at a random hotel in this beautiful lace, almost looks like a wedding dress. Would have been better than her real wedding dress that we see later on. Yeah, don't get you started on that. And then the trick with the mirror, more recycling. This is a season one callback from one of the very first episodes. No, it was the first episode actually.
Was it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because she ended up waking up to go to the tracks with the fancy man.
Hmm.
And she ended up saying, "You never know," because that's what Dorothy said when she stuck the mirror under there. So I guess we're just doing callbacks 7 years later. That I don't think was an intentional callback because there was no streaming or DVDs. They probably just thought we forgot that they already said that one.
Like
But
so many other
yeah,
plot
but
points.
I'll allow it, sure.
Excellent.
Um, I thought that was somewhat out of character for Rose to say, "Oh, but Blanche, you don't understand. It'll be a women's prison." Would Rose really pick up on that and have that comment, or is that just a rare moment of smartness?
Hmm. Well, I mean, Blanche did try to, I mean, the last time she was in prison, she tried to charm the guard the one time,
True.
and the guard ended up being a woman, and she, had to backtrack and be like, oh, what nice earrings.
True.
And the one time she was being audited by the IRS, she was all ready to use her sex appeal. And then, this woman, presumably straight woman, that's what we're led to believe, came in and audited her and foiled her plan.
Yeah, I guess maybe Rose would have remembered all that, like when they got the hot tub and she was gonna seduce the guy. But they have a lot of run-ins with the law to be, just regular middle-aged to elderly women. They've all gone to jail or been arrested or almost gone to jail quite a few times. That's a little troubling. I feel like that in itself could be an episode. But I did love her. Just ice cream if you want. That reminded me of Dorothy saying, "Welcome back, sweetie," to Rose when she had one moment of smartness. Because I'm like, okay, that's Rose. That's definitely Rose right there. I love Blanche saying, "I'm a Devereaux." I find it odd that she will say that so much. I would think she'd say, "I'm a Hollingsworth." Like, you're not really a Devereaux. Why would you, just take that on? I know that's your name, but I always found that odd. If I were in a situation, I would use my name, not my husband's name. But she's so
Mhm.
often like, "I'm a Devereaux." Is that really that great? I mean, the Devereaux that we've met haven't necessarily been that fantastic. So I'd rather be a Hollingsworth, I think.
Especially when in the same episode she had claimed, flirting is a part of her heritage. It's not Devereaux heritage
True.
necessarily.
And why does Big Mommy have to be a slut? If anybody's a slut, it's Big Daddy because of
Exactly.
Mammy Watkins. And he also cheated on her because there was another music box. And then he slept with one of Blanche's friends. So he had to
Mm.
get Big Mommy a new Cadillac. So for them to make Big Mommy the slut, I think is just sexist writing that they automatically pin it on her. Way to go, guys. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm wondering, was Posey even a real employee? Did they just hire her as part of this whole scheme? Because that's just so weird to me.
It is very weird. I can't imagine a situation in which she wouldn't have been an employee, because how would Blanche have known that she was also competing for this job, or competing with her for this job?
True.
Am I
I,
mixing up
I guess
the
I'm
character?
thinking like maybe they had her as a fake employee, like a plant. Like, okay, later on we're gonna do this whole big thing, so just pretend to work here for now. Clearly, it's easy to get a job there. Dorothy just waltzed in.
She
Um,
sure.
but if she is just a regular employee, that makes it even more weird that they're like, "Hey, we're gonna let you pretend to murder him, even though you both are going for this position, and we'll pin it on her." Won't that be hilarious? I
Mm-hmm.
don't know in what scenario. I believe Lauren and Sarah from Enough Wicker worked at a museum together. So maybe this is something that happens. Maybe they can answer if this is just a realistic scenario for people, grown adults working in a legitimate museum in a major city, and we just aren't privy to it.
Could be. I would be curious to know if every time somebody is hired at the museum, if it's a threat to the existing employees, because both with Dorothy and with this
True.
Posey character, as soon as this other person was hired, Blanche was on high alert.
Like, is it
She
that
was
serious? Are the stakes that high for somebody who works her fingers to the bone 12 hours a week, pointing to the various
indispensable.
exhibits? I mean, I feel like they're very hot and cold. One day she's taking a whole college class to get a promotion, and then the other day she's like, "Yeah, screw this job." So I guess it just depends. I mean, clearly, screw it. She left to go buy a hotel, so I don't know where her commitment goes with this. Maybe when she doesn't have a boyfriend, it's just something to do. Who's to say?
Right.
Dorothy has her iconic Chanel earrings in this episode. I do want to point out that are clip on since B. Arthur's ears were not pierced. I wouldn't even think Chanel has clip on earrings. But I know I've seen some people, fans, say that they've like tracked down those earrings. That is definitely quite a find. My ears are not pierced either, so I'd have to wear the Chanel clip-ons. But it's just so weird to me how certain pieces from the show just become iconic. I don't know why. What is it about these Chanel earrings? You
Mhm.
seem like a fashionista from for your appearance. What do you
Oh
think?
gosh, I'm like most of my stuff is vintage. Well, I guess this is now vintage also, but I'm not versed in Chanel. I don't know the value of it. The person I live with could probably actually tell you more about the earrings than I could. Uh, he's not an appraiser, but I would say like casually
Mm.
appraises things for a living. It's complicated. Um, yeah, I don't know, but
Yeah,
it's interesting that some pieces have become so iconic, like a wicker purse
right.
that
Like
now
it's
nobody
just
can find.
various things, and I feel like it's not even the value of it that makes them iconic. I don't know what it is because I've never even thought about, oh, those must be worth a lot. I'm just like, those are Dorothy's earrings. If anybody has them on, oh, you have on Dorothy's earrings, and she wore them like one time, but I don't know why. And there's so many pieces, and I don't think there's a lot of shows that have that about them unless it's central to the episode, like on the Felicia Rashad show, as we'll call it. Theo had that shirt that Denise tried to make him. That was the Gordon Gartrell original, and that's iconic because there was a whole storyline about it. But with Golden
Mhm.
Girls, there's outfits that are iconic that are never even mentioned, never even referenced. I don't think anybody pointed out Dorothy's green silk tuxedo outfit on the show, but yet it's an iconic ensemble. And
Yep.
that could also probably be its own show, but I just felt like there were a few pieces that I really always remember, like that green suit that Blanche has on at the end. Because in the last season, she really had some really nice pieces, and a lot of
Mhm.
the stuff she wears like that, I think, are very Julia Sugarbaker from Designing Women. Like I could definitely see her. She has something similar that I saw in Blue, so maybe they all had the same person. I don't know that did their wardrobe, but the outfit with the shoulders out and the pink ruffles, she wore that at an award show in 91. I think it was like the American Comedy Award, something that doesn't exist anymore, I'm pretty sure.
Mhm.
But that's also another thing. I don't know of any other show where the actors wear this stuff outside of the show.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, are they asking for it? Was it theirs to begin with? Like, even the green outfit, I saw B. Arthur did a TV movie and she wore that in it. And she did a lot of commercials for this pharmacy in Canada called, like, Shoppers.
Shoppers Drug Mart.
Yeah, I think that's it. I want to make sure I'm not confusing it with Sophia's store that she went to for the oatmeal cookies, but I think that's it. And she wore it on there. I'm like, is this her outfit? Or did she just say, I love this bow tie silk outfit. I must wear this as much as possible. But again,
Right.
iconic. Even B. Arthur knew it was iconic, clearly. Um, did I
You know
have
what
any other?
outfit I would really
What?
like to see at the con? I would love to see two people dress in the peach dress that
That
Blanche and
is
Dorothy
a really
wore.
good idea. That would be really hilarious. But
Free
I'm like, where would
idea.
I find that? I need to find somebody that knows how to make clothes because there's so many outfits that I'd love to have. But I'm like, I don't know where I would even find that. I
Yeah.
typically just have gone to the thrift store whenever I've dressed up like one of them, and I try to stay true to it. Like, oh, Dorothy would never wear this, and try to get as close to it as possible. But that's a really good one. I'm excited to see what we're gonna see when we're there as far as outfits because I feel like there's gonna be some really really good ones that no one else would have thought of. So I
Hmm.
feel like I gotta step my game up for sure. Um,
I'm so excited for this event. Like, I've never been in a situation when I'm around that many hardcore fans.
Neither have I. It's gonna be. I'm trying to think of how to explain what it's like. Like our dog. Whenever she sees another dog, she gets so excited because she's rarely up close to them. So it's kind of like she knows there's dogs other than her, but she never gets to see any. So it's kind of the same thing. We know we're out there, but you never really meet anybody unless you have, like, I have hats and pins, and someone will say, "Oh, I love the Golden Girls," and you get excited, and they're like, "So which one is which?" And who is this? I'm like, okay, so you don't really like the show. So then it kind of takes away from the excitement. But anyone who is there, you know they're a real fan because they paid to be there. A lot of you are traveling. Thank God it's in the city that I live in. I'm sure I would have gone anyway, but I feel like that's a sign I need to be there. I need to make sure I am going to the Mother of a Solid Gold Dancer thing. I got to make sure I'm signed up for everything because I definitely have something that would be appropriate for that. And I don't want to miss any of the activities. I definitely want to be a part of everything. And hopefully everyone that's been on here so far to guest star and, all the people in our little circle, hopefully we can all meet up at some point, take some pictures, some videos, because I feel like this is, I don't know, obituary worthy, as I love to say. I don't know why it has to go to that, so grim, but this is certainly a highlight. And I've always said there need a Golden Girls convention, and here we are. So I'm very
Mhm.
excited about that. But do you have anything else to add about this fan favorite episode?
Hmm.
I feel like we touched on everything. I will say the background actors, in general, I tend to watch background actors when I watch a show just to see if they stay in character. And they had a lot of weird ones, like the chef, the maître d'. I'm like, are they in character
You mean
for
the
the
butler?
murder mystery? Right. Like, is that why they seem so weird? Or are these actual employees there? I guess it's open to interpretation. Also love the multiple references of Sophia wanting to get a piece of the cake that they just kept working in there. I feel like Estelle Getty was having an especially fun time in this episode,
Oh yeah.
and they
Big
kept
deal. It's
cutting to
before
her,
that.
and she just kept making these hilarious expressions the whole time, which I don't know if they were intentional or if she was in character, out of character. I don't know, but she seemed to really be enjoying herself. And then shout out to Dorothy's outfit as well when they first got there. Very ornate, very headmistress at Hogwarts or something like that. Definitely love that.
Yes, great details there. One moment I caught and really loved was when Dorothy was talking about the murder of the older guy and said, when a 20-year-old marries an 80-year-old, chances are she's not after his body. She laughed after that, and it seemed like a genuine break from B. Arthur. It was really lovely.
I always wonder because there are times where they seem like they're breaking, but then, people that are writers or whatever will come on and be like, no, this was in the script and they would never break. They're professionals. I'm like, well, it looks, maybe they're just that great at acting that
Are you
they
thinking about like the
they
great
look
herring
like
lore?
it. Right, like that one, which has been debunked because multiple people have said that that they broke character, and other people say that Betty White improvised that whole scene. I'm like, okay, come on. But a writer did, show a script, and he's like, nope, this was in there. We told them to do this and that, but they're just that good that you don't always know. And Dorothy or B, whoever, seemed very tickled by that line
Mhm.
with the ha. And I think I had something else. I didn't realize I needed to scroll down on my notes. I had something else that I was gonna say. Oh, whenever I've seen this episode before and they do the replay when Dorothy's telling the story of Posey getting the knife, etc., I always thought that they filmed that separately. So this time I rewound it, and she was really doing that in the background as Blanche was talking. So they just probably filmed it from another angle to use for when Dorothy talked about it, but I never really noticed that before. So
Interesting.
they didn't even have to do that. We wouldn't have known, but I guess they wanted to make it as real. And I also rewound it when Blanche answered the door because I'm like, how does she not see him sprawled out with the knife in his chest? And I figured I would be able to see it, but they strategically angled it in this gigantic footboard, so that's why. But even with the guy that came to the door with the champagne, like that
Mhm.
would have tipped me off. Like, okay, something's up because his response was so theatrical and the way he ran off like that. But I guess Blanche was just too stunned to notice.
And
But definitely, it would be a top episode for me. I did laugh out loud when I watched it today, and I've seen it no matter. I don't know how many times I've seen it. My mother's like, "How can you keep laughing every time you see it?" When I tell her, that I still watch it, but it genuinely is hilarious.
It is honestly funny.
So I think that that's probably why it's a fan favorite because it's out of the house, so it doesn't necessarily feel like Golden Girls to someone that may not be a Golden Girls fan. And there wasn't a lot of references to stuff that you have to be a fan of the show to get. It's an episode that can stand alone and you can just enjoy that episode. So maybe that's why it's the most popular because most of the episodes you really can't enjoy the same unless you already watch.
Yeah, I could see that. And it's such a specific genre that, it's easy for people to identify with it and, place their own references in it,
True, because
unless
this
that's
could
you
be
as
like
Shinola.
a standalone play or something, honestly. I was impressed though. I don't think I would have put all that together. I know Dorothy's smart, but that was a bit much, especially at the last minute to just come up with that entire thing for both Kenneth and with the original one. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like they give Dorothy too much credit, like the whole the watch is on the other arm, and I mean maybe I'm just not observant, but that seemed like a lot to me. But I don't want to take away from Dorothy. She's a brilliant woman. It
Hmm.
could have been in Mensa or Girlsa. But thanks again for suggesting this one. I don't think I would have even thought of it for some reason. My mind always goes to other episodes when I think of like what's the top episode that I want to talk about. So I'm glad that you were able to be the one to select this one, and I definitely am glad that you were able to come and join. Come back anytime you would like, and I'm excited to see what you're going to have on. I'm sure we're going to do some type of live podcast or something. So prepare for cameras to be in your face so we can see this outfit and let the world see it. But any parting words? Where can anybody find you if they want to follow you somewhere? Anything you sell non Golden Girls related since you're here?
Well, I don't sell anything at the moment, but we'll see. I can be found on Twitter and Instagram at Psychedelia. Um, Nothing to plug. All I can say, it's been a true pleasure talking to you today, and I can't wait to meet you at the con.
Likewise, thank you so much. And as always, everyone, say it together, anyone who's listening. Thank you
Thank
for
you
being a
for being
friend.
a friend.
To all you image consultants, OK Petunias, and fancy men out there, don't forget to follow So Good We Named It on Instagram and Twitter at So Good We Named It. And check us out at the very first Golden Girls Convention, Goldencon, in Chicago, April 22nd through 24th. Go to thankyouforbeingafan.com for more information. And as always, thank you for being a friend. Hello and welcome to So Good We Named It, the first Golden Girls and Golden Palace podcast. And to my knowledge, the first Golden Girls or Golden Palace podcast with black hosts. I'm Barrett.
And I'm Kay.
Welcome back, Kay. You were gone for 2 whole episodes. I didn't know what happened to you. I thought maybe you went the way of Aunt Angela and we just would never see you again and we'd replace you with the male counterpart.
I was actually touring the islands of Peru because I
Oh,
have an illustrious lifestyle.
wow. Well, we're glad to have you back. And this is quite an honor to have a very extra special guest co host, the Matt Browning. And I just happen to have this. I go to bed with it every night. The definitive Golden Girls Cultural Reference Guide. Welcome, Matt Browning.
Hopefully, you don't just use it to prop up your bed frame.
Not gonna lie, I don't read it that much because I don't want to mess it up. But I will have it with me so I can at least get it signed. And if you don't put in there, I've inspired you more than you'll ever know, I will be offended. But thank you for coming to the show. Would you like to give us a little plug, all your many things you do?
Yeah, I have been operating for like 25 years. EmptinessTV.com, the only, to my knowledge, website devoted to the Golden Girls spinoff show. I've been a lifelong fan of all of those Miami sitcoms, which led me to write the definitive Golden Girls Cultural Reference Guide.
Now that is a feat. 20 something years running this website.
1998. Where are we now? So
2022.
almost.
That is commitment. I don't know if we'll be doing this 22 years from now, but I actually don't remember my grandmother or anybody watching Golden Girls, which is everybody's stock thing to say, but I do remember her watching Empty Nest. That I
Mm.
specifically recall. So I was familiar with the show, and I used to get these TV theme song CDs. Those were the CDs I was buying, nothing else. And one of them had the Empty Nest song, which I, memorized and I'd be singing along, not even knowing, much about the show. So then when I started following you and you kept raving about it, I did go, as I told you, and watch all the clips with Sophia from when she was added to the show. But I was like, I cannot add another show to my roster that I need to keep up with. However, when you said you would do the show, you suggested some episodes. So now I feel like I have to finish because the ones that I saw were pretty entertaining. So, what is it
I tried to
about?
give you some of the best, some of
Right.
the best of the
These were
bunch.
these are pretty good, and I did venture off on my own a little bit, and I still was not disappointed. What is it about Empty Nest specifically that just has this hold on you?
I loved it as a kid, but back in those days, the shows were a package deal. You watched one and you watched the other. They were sort of one thing in my mind. But when I turned like 17, 18, I got my first computer in the 90s. Instead of looking up like porn or whatever, I was looking up, I was looking up Golden Girls and Empty Nest at age 17, 18. And even then, Golden Girls was everywhere online. There were fan sites all over the place, but nothing for Empty Nest. So I thought, okay, I'll just do one myself, figuring it would be a silly little waste of, a couple of weeks in the summertime. But like I said, 25 years later, it's still here. It really took off. And I kind of became the flag bearer, I guess, in a lot of ways for Empty Nest when nobody else was doing it.
The trailblazer.
Right. I
I
mean,
guess. I guess.
I do feel like it is ridiculous in hindsight that it does not get anywhere near the same fanfare. I don't think it should necessarily be as popular. I don't know if I need a Barbara on a coffee mug, but
Hmm.
it still is part of the universe, and just the times where they just come into the show, like Sophia in the hurricane episode, and she comes in to tell Harry about the hurricane. It's like a whole other part of their world that we otherwise would never know anything about, and to be able to
Right.
connect it all, and with nurses, which I've never seen. I'm like, Hulu, what are you doing? That's why I'm always retweeting and everything. If I was using my own Hulu account, I would have said something to them, but I'm on someone else's. So I feel like I don't want to bring too much attention, but I commend your efforts. And when it does happen, because we're speaking it into existence, you can get all the accolades for that, for sure.
You know, people forget it hasn't had the longevity of the Golden Girls in terms of pop culture. And it wasn't as good. I'm not pretending that it was.
Mhm.
But people forget that, back in the day, it was a popular top 10 show and eventually even earned more ratings than the Golden Girls. A lot of people don't know that one. Um, so yeah, it definitely had its day. It just hasn't fared as well, I guess, in reruns or whatever.
Mm.
Um,
Well, it also lasted longer, and hopefully you can't hear that. I don't know why the cats love to use the litter box when I'm recording. Any other time, they're fine.
well, my dog is
But
at my bedroom door. I hope that's
um,
not bothering people either, listeners.
I definitely had a newfound appreciation. However, Kay was telling me earlier that she was not a fan, and I said, "Well, let's discuss with Matt because I would love to know why you were not feeling it if you love the Golden Girls."
Why do you have to be problematic? Like you could have introduced that in a different way.
I just want to
You
get
could
it out
have
there now.
could have
I'm
phrased it
curious. I
differently.
want to know.
I mean, I am very, very biased against the Golden Girls, and I absolutely love the show and everything that they do. I have a hard time, I don't want to say accepting change, but like I'm just used to one thing with them. And so when you incorporate other characters, I'm like, I don't even know these people. So I'll give it another chance. But on the first, go around and I watched a couple episodes, I'm like, this isn't the Golden Girls.
I mean, I get that, and I feel like a lot of spin-offs can never move away from the show that they came from, but I think this does stand alone. Now, the constant scenes with the girls, of course, brings you back to the fact that it's a spin-off, but
Yeah.
I think it speaks for itself. Wouldn't you say, Matt?
Yeah, it does. I mean, especially in the beginning, the Golden Girls were popping over all the time as it tried to establish itself. But
Mm,
as it went on, they became less reliant on their lead in and really became their own sort of show. But then again, towards their end, they brought Sophia on full time, so
Yeah,
it came
they
right
had
back to where it
to
started in
go
that
back
sense.
to their their former life. And I forgot that Barbara and Carol didn't always live there. And even though I never watched it, I pride myself on knowing about every TV show, regardless. And seeing the first couple episodes, and they're just like, "Oh, I popped in to give you groceries. I popped in to do this." I see why they eventually had to come back because you can only pop in so many times. But I did used to think, why is it called empty nest when they live with him? The nest is not empty. But now I see it originally was. I don't know if you have any backstory about that.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. For the first probably half of the first season, they didn't live with Dr. Weston. He was experiencing the empty nest syndrome, and he was a widower, and he was trying to get back into dating and blah, blah, blah. But to get the two girls over to the house, they had to come over for a reason. So they had to spend a lot of time giving them a reason to come over to see daddy 24 hours a day. So for the stories to work, they eventually moved them back into the house. So then the whole emptiness concept sort of took on a different, ironic kind of vibe, because then you had your adult children moving back in with their parents, which sort of was a thing at the time and is still a thing today, I guess, to some degree.
Yeah, the show Indebted that had Fran Drescher. It's kind of a similar thing, except the parents moved in with the kids, but it's like, we still have these, multi generational houses. And another show, I forget the name of it, Crowded. Both of these shows only lasted like 12 episodes, but it was the same thing. The parents and then their kids and then their parents. And I think that's something that you continue to see throughout TV because it's something that happens. And this is probably one of the first ones that really showed it as a realistic thing, because I'm sure they didn't have to live there. I don't know what Carol does, but she seems to have a job. And I know Barbara's a cop, so they probably don't have to live there.
Carol had all kinds of jobs over the course of the 7 years. But yeah, they did a whole episode of why they had to move back in. And it was Carol was just lonely and nothing better to do. And Barbara had like a bunch of credit card debt that was catching up to her. So for those reasons, they moved back in.
Do you think the show could have worked had they kept them separate?
Probably not, because they would have still had to do that reasoning for them to pop over, right? It just makes sense in a sitcom, especially when you got 22 minutes,
right,
to have your characters sort of in one location together so that they can interact.
Exactly. I mean, the Golden Girls, if they were all just neighbors, it would have been a completely different show, because so much of it came from them living together. I do want to ask you, let me scroll up and see what I had posed to you previously. The original concept, the very hated empty nest episode, do you think it could have worked at all with that original concept with Isaac Newton and Rita Moreno?
Sir Isaac Newton.
No, I don't think it could have. I mean, Rita Moreno can carry a show. There's no question about that. But that particular show sucked.
It did. And I know there's history with it, but I just can't see how it even made it on TV. Like, did they not watch it back?
Well, apparently, as the legend goes, Susan Harris, who wrote and created all of these shows, she was going through empty nest syndrome in real life, is why she developed the idea. But I guess the week of the taping, she was very, very ill. I don't know, maybe with chronic fatigue, right? Because she really had that. So she wasn't there, and she wasn't able to fix all the problems it had. That's what Rita Moreno blamed it on. But again, even the character, like the guy with the split personalities,
I feel like nothing worked.
That's so gimmicky.
Like really nothing about it at all worked. Even
Paul Dooley, the guy that played the husband in Isaac Newton, good actor, but not terribly funny, I don't think.
He's pretty dull. I don't see him as a leading man at all.
No.
And they had no chemistry. There's just so many things. Do you think that with the emptiness we originally got, that he could have still had a wife, even if not Rita Moreno, and it would have still worked? Or do you think she needs to be dead regardless for it to do
not dead?
I mean, it's what it is.
That's a good question. I can't not picture Harry Weston being the widower and that being such a part of what that show was. So I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it works the way that it eventually became. That there's nothing about the original that really needed to stay, except for the house, which they kept. But other than that, I mean, the exterior was different, if I recall correctly, but other than that, it was all changed, and I think it was for the better. It's one of the few times you see a backdoor pilot and they actually make it way better and completely different when it does come to series. Usually they either forget about it or they just keep the crappy idea and let it get canceled. So I do
It's
appreciate
kind of surprising they even
that.
brought it to series after that. But Richard Mulligan back in those days was like so beloved after Soap that I
Yeah, I
think
was not
people
super
liked
familiar
seeing
with
him
him
back on TV.
until I did look more into Empty Nest a while ago and realized he was on that show, which I know Susan was over. So it made sense because to me, it's just some random guy. But now that I know it's somebody that previously had a big show, just like on Golden Girls, that's part of the appeal to bring you in of they're back on TV with this new show. So that alone would draw people. I don't know if Isaac had a show before, but I don't think he did. So I do
Well, and
think so
Christy
much
McNichol
work.
too was a big teen star in the '70s, so that was sort of her return
That I
to
don't think
TV
I
Mm.
too.
knew. I know that she did some stuff because I did look up like why she retired, but I didn't really know much about what she did before. So, that definitely makes sense as well. So I feel like all the little parts. I don't know if anything else David Leisure was in, but I feel like I've seen him in other stuff too.
So he was famous at that time for being in a series of Isuzu
That's
um,
right. That's what
TV
it is.
commercials, playing this smarmy, lying salesman character named Joe Isuzu,
So
which actually
that
got a
fits.
reference on the Golden Girls in one of those episodes, if you remember.
I don't. I'm gonna have to look. All I recall
And
is him.
Dorothy was going to dinner with, I think she was going to dinner with Stan when he was trying to impress the Japanese salesman.
Oh, I think I
And he
remember
was
that.
like, you
Mr.
must be appalled
Yamagata.
Joe Isuzu wasn't played by an Asian actor.
Mm.
I think you're thinking of Mr. Yamamoto,
Yokomoto. Yeah, yeah,
who
yeah.
was
Yeah.
gonna buy the house. I think that's who that was.
Okay. But yeah,
Okay.
that was David Leisure's claim to fame, was
Um,
being like a
but I
TV pitch name.
but I feel like I can see a lot of that in that character as well, which
Yeah.
maybe that's just his thing, what works works. But I will say that I'm skipping around a little bit, but I watched the episode with B. Arthur or Dorothy's so-called nephew. What nephew? Is it the dog groomer that Phil had, or is it one of Gloria's rich kids? I guess that part's irrelevant. But
I kind of
seeing,
assumed Gloria,
I mean, I
the
would
way
hope
he
so. I can't
carried
imagine
himself.
any of Phil's kids would be good enough.
Mhm.
But it was nice to see her without the other girls. I felt like she was more confident and in command without somebody ripping on her constantly. It was a different side of Dorothy, I guess.
I
Um,
always thought her and Harry Weston might have made a nice couple.
they always did seem to have a little bit of chemistry because I know Blanche would
Hmm.
always throw herself at him. I don't know if Rose ever really making a move, but I feel like they could have worked. Now that's what the finale should have been. She should have married Harry Weston.
It's
Maybe
true.
that'll be my new fanfic.
And
But
really, if Empty Nest had stopped after its fourth season, because those last three seasons were where things were pretty shaky every year.
yeah, it's interesting that both shows got revamped. And I know that part of why they went to CBS for Golden Palace is because they couldn't commit to a full season. But you retooled Empty Nest, so why the hell not? I don't know why it made a difference. Or they could have just combined the two for one big power hour. They could have done whatever they wanted. I
If
love
Golden
Marsha
Palace would have
Warfield.
stayed on NBC, I think they would have lasted a few
I
years.
think it would have gotten at least 3 seasons, my personal opinion. But I feel like once they left, it was the domino effect, and nurses left, and
Hmm.
all of that type of thing. Unfortunately, I wanted to ask you how you feel about the various guest spots overall of all the girls on the show and the Empty Nest characters on Golden Girls.
Um, I think my favorite is the one when Rose and Harry get into a car accident. I don't know if you had a chance to watch that
I did
one.
not see that. I've heard of that one, but I have not watched it yet.
It's pretty consistently funny, and she's actually a part of the story. Now, when Sophia popped on in the early years, she was like really just the cameo. She was like the quick hurricane cameo.
Hmm.
She didn't really have any impact on the story. Um, but Rose, that particular episode, the name of it has flown out of my head, but it's a really good episode. There's the one where Blanche comes over and she like mercilessly throws herself at Harry in trying to get him to go out with her.
So distasteful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was funny. It was funny, but it was like Blanche full speed ahead.
Hmm.
Was it worse
And that
than
was
when
the
they
only
had the
episode she
baby?
did.
Is it worse than when they had the baby and she was trying to flirt with Harry while the little kid had the fever?
Oh, you know what? Maybe it's like 20 minutes of that.
Oh,
It's one
sounds
episode
about
of that
right.
kind of.
Um,
I liked the Dorothy episode for the same reasons that you just said. She Rue and Bee only did the one crossover each, and I think Betty did 3, and Estelle did maybe 2 before she joined full time.
I can see Betty doing 3. I feel like Betty White would do anything. She just loved, being on screen. So I can see her being the one if they say, "Hey, who wants to do Empty Nest?" She's probably like, "Oh, me, I'll do it."
And if you notice, like when Harry Weston and Dreyfus come over to the girls' house, she interacts with the dog right away every time.
Yeah, that's
She
true.
loved animals.
She really did.
In real
that's
life.
that's a good actor. The dog. When I was watching it today, and my dog was in the bed, I'm like, oh, this could have been you, but I don't think you follow cues as well. Like when he went in the cabinet and pulled the little towel to close it because the hurricane was coming. I'm like, now that's an actor.
He did that joke a lot. That the dog got super popular back in the day. He was on the cover of TV Guide like 3 or 4
I'm
times.
surprised they didn't have stuffed
Back in the
animals of Dreyfus. Missed opportunity. Is that the same dog throughout the whole show? Do you know?
So the dog that played him primarily was named Bear in real life, and he had a brother who sort of stood in for Dreyfus sometimes, who was on the Golden Girls when Sophia bought the other dog at the pet store because she thought she lost Dreyfus.
Oh, that was
that dog kind of stood in for Dreyfus every now and then. But primarily it was a dog named Bear. So if you think of Dreyfus, it's Bear you're probably thinking of.
Okay, your dog's named Bear. Maybe he can be on a show sometime. I don't know if he can follow.
His name is
directions.
Bear. He's not mannerable.
Yeah,
No,
not
he
like
can't.
Dreyfus. I do
You
feel
know, the
like
question I used to get most on my website was what breed of dog is Dreyfus? I got that so many times, so I tried to plaster it all over the website so people wouldn't have to ask.
I did see something about that today, and I was like, I never even knew that was a mix. It was Golden Retriever and something else like
And Saint Bernard.
yeah, Saint Bernard.
Saint Bernard,
And I
yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
wow, that I wouldn't even think of that. And I guess I've never seen another dog that looks like Dreyfus, so that does make sense.
And I always wanted one when I was little because he was so unique looking.
And so well mannered. Gentle giants, I might say. I do think that the cameos were better versus like TGIF, and Urkel would just pop up at the Full House set, and vice versa. And it was more so just like, hey, I'm on this other show, now I'm on this one. Everybody laugh, goodbye. I feel like they actually seem like neighbors. And the little bit that I
Yeah.
saw of Carol and Barbara and Harry on Golden Girls was enough, for me to be interested. Like the episode, I think it was the Moonlight Madness, and she's like, "Oh, she laughed about it," and she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go and get her." That was funny, and it made me want to watch the show because if they're this funny in these little parts, I can only imagine a full show. Do you think those are accurate portrayals of the characters from Empty Nest when we see them on Golden Girls?
For the most part, they always sort of wrote Carol kind of annoying in her little sneak scene there. But her character was supposed to be annoying. She was like super neurotic and nuts. So the Carol and Barbara characters were sort of developed to be adversarial and play off of each other, and really just not get along. So that was a source of a lot of the jokes and storylines. So when Christy McNichol left, Diana Manoff said half my act left, and things were never the same once she was gone. And that's true. They lost really a lot of what made the show work when she stepped away.
Yeah, and then to add all these other characters, the dynamic just still wouldn't be there. And I feel like so much of the Golden Girls is based on, Blanche is a slut, Dorothy's, allegedly ugly and manly, and Sophia's mean old lady, Rose is dumb. But I feel like in the bits that I've seen, they don't really harp on those types of things as much. It's just comedy for whatever's going on in the situation. I do feel like they lean on the country bumpkin stuff a little bit with Park Overall's character, but in general, I didn't see a lot of that. Is that a good, depiction, or did I just not get the right episodes?
Park Overall kind of made it her mission to defend the integrity of Southern characters on TV. I think she did it at the expense of being a pain in the ass to work with a lot of the time, which she will say herself. But that's one of the things that drew me to the show is that I'm from Appalachia, right? And her character was from Arkansas, but Park Overall's from Tennessee, and I'm from West Virginia. So it's like, as a kid, it's like, here's somebody that sounds like me and the people I'm around starring on a TV show, and she's not just a joke, she's a badass. And that was really cool to see. But apparently she had to fight for for keeping her with some integrity.
I think I read that on your website. I read it somewhere, and I can't imagine who else would have been talking about that but you. So it probably was your website. And
But I will say, towards the end, like towards the Marsha Warfield era, like Marsha Warfield was great, but when they brought that character on, she sort of inherited a lot of the no nonsense toughness that Laverne used to have. So then what, right? Then the country bumpkin stuff really amped up.
Too many chefs in the kitchen at that point. Initially, I think it was the first episode and a few of the other ones, there was a lot of that, eating roadkill type of thing. And I thought about your article, and I'm like, well, I thought she was against this, but maybe it was too early on for her to, want to make
There's a line in the pilot, that might be the one you're talking about, and it was pretty stereotypically Southern humor, but she really, probably as the show went on, probably really stood up for that kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah, I didn't really think about the fact that we do always see those characters portrayed as dumb, like Charlene from Designing Women. I don't know why that's always the assumption. I'm just thinking of all the characters now that we're talking about it. So I guess this would just be one of them. Maybe Reba's the one that broke the mold with that. But which Park also was on for a while, but then disappeared, and I guess Reba had no more friends anymore. But I wonder, like, do you think that it could have continued at the same pace without the complete change of adding Marsha Warfield, adding Sophia? Do you think it could have just progressed on what they were doing even without that other character, Barbara?
So when Christy McNichol left, it was like early into the 5th season. So then what do you do, right? When one of your main cast members vanishes. So it was supposed to just be temporary. So they cast what was previously an off-screen third sister named Emily. She was always mentioned, but she was never seen on screen. She was always at school. So they tried introducing her, and really it was pretty good. I mean, but the problem was she had impossible shoes to fill, right? Mm-hmm. And nobody was going to suddenly take to this character we knew nothing about. So she didn't last very long. And then the next season is when they brought on Sophia. So it was a familiar face, but still just wasn't in very good health by that point, Mm-hmm. And if you watch them, you can kind of tell she wasn't really there for storylines. She was just there to give Carol somebody to talk to at the house. So if they weren't going to get Christy back, I think they could have maybe kept on the other sister and had a little bit more of a storyline drive versus trying to just shoehorn Sophia in for some familiarity, I guess.
Right. I mean, I'm always happy to get any little, sliver of extra Golden Girls, but in a way it kind of kills the, legacy of the character that she went from this, really important part of the show to just being the Urkel, basically, of Empty Nest. And they also could have explained what happened after Golden Palace. Like, did no one on set say, like, hey, can we just throw in one line at all? But no, just no explanation. Back to Shady Pines you go, which I think is
I don't know if it was because they were on a different network, if that was an issue in those days. I don't know. But yeah, it was no explanation at all.
Like, they get a real finale. The Golden Girls really didn't because they knew Golden Palace was coming. And I think that would have been a ratings hit if they at least had the other girls come on there and explain something. But what do I know?
I really feel like they missed it to bring one of them back, any of them back, for some sort of guest appearance, I mean, or sometimes I wonder, like, what if Betty had joined the show instead of Estelle?
That would have been interesting. I feel like she would have had
way more of an
impact.
But...
She could have married Harry. Marry Harry, a little rhyme. But, these are just ideas for my Golden Girls Empty Nest fan fiction coming soon. I wanted to ask you, what do you think about Laverne's stories versus St. Olaf's stories?
Well, I mean, come on. Nothing's going to beat a St. Olaf story.
Nothing.
True. Definitely. And I feel like
Laverne was from Hickory, Arkansas. So she was always telling these crazy stories of her hillbilly friends and relatives from back home. Funny and enjoyable. But they didn't use that quite as often as the Golden Girls did with the St. Olaf stories. I mean, St. Olaf's came up almost every episode. Mm-hmm. The Hickory stories were sort of peppered throughout, but there are some great ones. There are some really funny ones. But again, towards the last couple of seasons, they kind of just got lame.
They're just throwing it in there just to throw it in there.
Yeah.
I didn't notice before, but there's a lot of Golden Girls like set stuff and props. Like the chairs from the kitchen are in the back, and then at another point I saw when the sorority episode happened. That's where they did the murder mystery dinner. That's also Grammy's plantation. So it's good to know they keep all of that recycling going, as I discussed on the last episode. Their carbon footprint is going to be very low. And
Well,
Harry
those office
also
doors are all over the place.
true. And Harry has like a pitcher for orange juice that I also have. And I looked it up, and apparently it's from the 60s, so maybe it's worth something, but I noticed it in the pilot, so great job, set design. You have great taste. I find it interesting that they changed not only the theme song, but the intro. And again, the Golden Girls, they didn't get that. We see a few clips thrown in there, but I guess I assume they're both from the same people. Why is this show treated so differently? I don't know if you have any insight on that.
I don't know really. I know Empty Nest changed the first time during its third season, which would have been the Golden Girls' sixth season. So maybe maybe in the era, but back in that day, that's what everybody did, was change stuff every year. And then in their fourth season, they totally sped up the theme song and made it much more like jazzier and upbeat. But I think I kind of like the original one better myself.
Yeah, I guess maybe more so that's a 90s thing of, having to revamp the intro every year. And the Golden Girls, they were like, well, we're almost done, so who cares?
And they started doing the tag scenes on the end when it was a real scene over the closing credits. I think
Yeah,
Empty Nest started doing that a little bit
was a
before
90s
Golden
thing.
Girls did too.
For sure.
But that was very much an early 90s sitcom thing to do.
And of course, none of those I ever saw watching it on Lifetime. It wasn't until the
No.
DVDs.
Right.
It
It
used
was
to
like
drive me
all those
crazy when
scenes.
they would play stuff over those.
I'm curious, why do you think none of the girls ever dated Harry? And do you think it could have worked with any of them? I feel like it's going to be Dorothy based on our earlier conversation. But do you think it could have worked with any of them outside of Dorothy or just Dorothy?
Probably just Dorothy. But then, I mean, so much of Empty Nest was about Harry going out on dates. So they couldn't really put him in a serious relationship, I guess, and still have stories to tell. But I think, yeah, if both shows were ready to end when Golden Girls ended, marrying the two of them would have been a cool way to do it. Because like I said, too, back in that era, like they were a package deal. You watched one, you watched the other.
Right. Or they
So a
could
lot
have
of
at
those
least dated for
crossovers
one.
made sense because you were already watching, right? You knew who they were.
Yeah, I really would
30 years
expect
later,
them
yeah.
to have dated him at least, even if it was one episode, just the fact that they were all, always trying to find a boyfriend at some point, and he was an eligible doctor down the street. I'm like, why is this not being seriously entertained by any of them other than Blanche? Although I think she wanted to do more than date. But that just
Yeah.
always would strike me as odd that it was never explored at all, really. But maybe there's a reason for that. They didn't
Harry
want
was very conservative, a very conservative character, and Blanche was just too wild for him, I think.
True.
But Dorothy and him would have worked.
I mean, he went a year and didn't have sex with that doctor in the pilot.
Yeah.
They were dating. That was
Which funny thing,
odd.
that actress in the finale played Laverne's mom.
Oh, they just had to bring her back one last time.
Yeah.
That is odd. I mean, I don't know if I'd be telling a man I want him to marry me when he wouldn't even call it a date or have sex with me after a year, but that's just me.
I mean, I thought it was kind of odd that they did it. They went out every Friday night or whatever for a year, and the subject of them being dates had never come up before she brought it up.
And his wife had only been dead 18 months, so at that point, they started dating after 6 months. I mean, it wasn't when the ambulance came like Blanche, but it is a little early. But I will say I loved her apartment, and that is a set I don't think I have seen before. So I was immediately impressed. I'm like, wow, this is for the pilot? Big budget. Have you seen the Empty Nest house in person?
I have not, but it's like 2 miles away from the real Golden Girls house.
Which I recently found out, and I was shocked to learn that they really were neighbors.
I had this guy email my website once and telling me all about the house because his cousin or somebody lived there. And he told me the address, but then he was like, please don't share it for their privacy. So I didn't. But then this big article came out where these people on this TV blog or something found it and posted all about it.
Yeah, I think that's
Oh,
the one I
wow.
looked at. I think it's called like I Am
Yeah.
Not a Stalker or something, and they literally just look for all the houses from TV shows and post about them, which is good to know, for someone who loves TV, but unfortunate for whoever lives there. I personally think
Hmm.
HGTV should purchase both houses and redo them to match the inside like they did the Brady Bunch house, but again, what
I
do I
did
know?
scroll over on the Google Street View to see if the house they used for Charlie was really next door, but it wasn't.
Oh yeah, I forgot that he did live next door. Why was he always home if he was supposed to be on a cruise ship? Is that
Yeah,
explained?
that's another one of those suspension of disbelief.
Okay. I didn't know if maybe they explained it and I missed it.
No, they never did.
I've talked about when I was on Enough Wicker about how men cheating is seen as so normal. And in the little bit I watched of this show, it seems to be the same thing. Carol, big part of her character is the fact that she was cheated on. And then, spoiler alert, Laverne's husband cheats on her. And again, it's just like, well, that's what happens. Do you
Yeah,
feel like that's a continuing theme on that show as well? That's just, how it is?
I guess so. I guess you saw that a lot back then, didn't you? Now that you point that out. Well, look at Charlie as a character. He wasn't really in relationships to cheat per se, but he was always just a smarmy, sleazy, skirt chasing
Hmm.
character that you used to see back then. You really couldn't or shouldn't get away with that today.
And
You
maybe
know?
it's just a sign of the times. And every time you say Charlie, I think of Charlie Nyland. Like, when was he on here?
Instantly.
They couldn't think of
I
another
instantly
name.
think of him.
But I
You ever watch
do.
Frasier? Like the character Bulldog reminded me a lot of Charlie. Just that.
I have not. Is that another show I'm gonna have to binge now at your suggestion? I got to get through this one first before I can get over there. But I do wonder: do we ever see Laverne's husband, or was he like a Phil
Oh
that
yeah.
we just hear about?
No, he was in like 3 or 4 episodes.
Okay,
He was played by Christopher McDonald,
where do
who's
I
been
know
in
him
tons of
from?
stuff, but I am blanking on what it was now. Grease 2, if you ever saw Grease
I
2,
I
he was
have
in
not,
that.
not yet. It's on my watch
Uh,
list.
Everything's on your watch
Yeah.
list.
Look him up.
Um,
Look him up. He was in all kinds of stuff.
but
And I don't know why. Maybe it was just the story idea was to sort of make Laverne vulnerable because she really wasn't a vulnerable character. So that was
they didn't have to
probably
do
the.
that to her. Do they get back together, or is this a permanent
No,
thing? Damn, that
no.
seems unnecessary. The one happily married person on the show, and they're like, nope, we're gonna get rid of that too.
Yeah, so they had her go on some dates, in subsequent seasons. But spoiler alert, she does get into a relationship in the final season.
Oh, well, at least she finally
I could
gets
spoil the finale if you want
something.
me to.
I've seen a few bits. I feel like I have to at least go watch that so I'm prepared. But I just assumed because every episode I watched the last couple days, he wasn't in it, and she kept talking about it. I'm like, oh, this is another Stanley Walker or just somebody that they're always going to talk about. So I'm very shocked to learn that we do in fact see him, which makes me more outraged. I can, take being cheated on by someone we don't see, but we grew to love you, I assume. Laverne's husband, and this is what you do to us. Does he ever even come back to explain himself, or they're just
The
No.
audacity.
His mother appears on a later episode, and she
I watched that
has
one, I
no idea
think.
they've even split up. So that was that storyline.
I saw her in the hurricane episode. Is that when we find that out, or did she
No,
come back another time?
she comes back in one of the later seasons.
Okay, because I forget that their later seasons are not the girls' later seasons because I'm like putting them in the same timeline, but they lasted like 3 years after that, right? In '95.
Yeah. She came back. The mother-in-law came back during the Sophia era of Empty Nest.
Which is crazy to think that she was Sophia for 10 years and on Blossom. She got a lot of mileage out of that character. Do they, I know they don't really mention what happens to anybody, but do you recall any mention at all of the other girls from her, or does she just act like that
Oh, yeah.
life never happened?
There weren't any Blanche or Rose ones, but they would make Dorothy jokes every now and then. Nothing very memorable, and it was just like a throwaway line. But yeah, Dorothy probably maybe 3 times over the course of her 2 seasons.
So B just
And it
couldn't
was
catch a
always
break.
like, Dorothy did this back in the day or kind of things. Because Carol was, the whole 6th season, Carol was going through a pregnancy. So it was a lot of Sophia's pregnancy. She would kind of
Wasn't
recollect
she her
her
Lamaze
touch.
coach? I think I saw that.
Yes.
Of all
That was in
people.
an episode of Nurses. So they crossed, Sophia and Carol crossed over onto a Nurses where they went to Lamaze class with a Nurses character who was pregnant. And yeah,
Mm.
Sophia was supposedly Carol's Lamaze coach.
So I assume that she gets married. Does she still live in the house with her husband and this kid?
So Carol did not get married. So in season 5, they gave her a boyfriend, and that's who she got pregnant by. But then he left.
Oh,
So
Oh
yeah,
wow.
she stayed in the house with the baby and Harry.
jeez, Louise. Does she ever catch a break? She got left twice, and this time she's pregnant.
So spoiler alert for listeners who've not seen the show: the finale is a double wedding, and Carol and Laverne both.
Aw.
That
They're
seems
loved.
unrealistic that she get married with her father's nurse.
Jeez.
But okay. Maybe something happened I didn't see in those 8 seasons that would, have that make sense. Because I haven't even seen them interact yet in the episode that I've seen, but maybe later
Oh,
on.
Carol and Laverne.
Hmm.
The finale lays out how that happens. Yeah,
So it makes sense. It's not just thrown together.
right.
Okay, I can accept that, I suppose. But at what point does Laverne get to leave the hospital? Because again, I mainly just saw her at the hospital, except for with her mother-in-law. When does she get to come over the house and get involved?
She does. Not a whole heck of a lot, but whenever the story, I guess, makes sense for her to do that. But yeah, most of the time it was like Harry at home with Carol and Barbara Dreyfus, or Harry at work with Laverne, and you had an A story or a B story in one of those locations.
Gotcha.
It's like if the A story was happening at home, the stuffed hospital was like the B story, or vice versa.
I think I have to watch it again, without the Golden Girls in mind, because so much of I'm like, oh, well, if this was Golden Girls, this would be happening, this would be happening, but it's not Golden Girls. It's a different show. The font is the same in the credits, but that's about it. Because I
The
do feel like
font.
it's structured differently, and just the dynamics and their interactions are differently. Because with Golden Girls, you know what you're gonna get. You know Dorothy's gonna give a look. You know that Sophia's gonna have a wisecrack, so you just get used to that. And maybe there's things like that in Empty Nest that, as a
Mm.
longtime viewer, you may notice. I don't know, but it's just all over the place for me as someone that doesn't usually watch it. Is that something that they kind of rely on the same things a lot, like Golden Girls?
Oh yeah, it definitely sort of gets into its formula. But you had the two sort of arenas of the show: the Weston house and the pediatrics office. But it was always fun whenever they could find a reason for somebody other than Harry to be interacting with Laverne. And I always enjoyed those episodes. They didn't come up a whole heck of a lot. One they did that was fun, and it was right towards the end. They had Charlie and Laverne sort of have a little spark between the two of them, and everybody was afraid they were going to start dating. And I'm like, well, this is when it took us 7 seasons to get to, but it kind of worked, strangely enough.
Didn't he sleep with
Who knows? Maybe that could have been an episode.
with Carol too?
Hmm?
Didn't he sleep with Carol at some point?
Yes.
Oh, so he just worked his way through. Did Marsha Warfield get in on this, or did it stop at those?
She didn't. But the Carol and Charlie characters were like head-butting constantly, like they hated each other. So when they did the episode that threw the two of them together, that was a really fun one to watch. And from what I understand, a very fun one for the two actors to play, because they're like really good friends in real life. And it's
Aw.
both of theirs. They both called that one of their favorite episodes to tape.
I think I read that on your interview as well. That's the only reason I even know, because I haven't seen that episode. But I feel like a lot of shows do that, like The Nanny with Niles and Cece, or Living Single with Max and Kyle. It's always fun to get the characters that hate each other to end up falling in love or sleeping together and playing off of that dynamic. So I'll allow it.
I read in an article one time that when they were talking about how to end the show, one of the producers suggests Harry and Laverne get married.
That's a little weird.
And I think everybody said no, that wouldn't work. And I don't think it would have. But I don't know. Laverne and Charlie, I mean, who knows?
I feel like she's like another daughter to him.
Yeah, that would have been super weird.
Yeah, I'll stick
They
with
did do an
Harry and
episode where
Dorothy.
Laverne was having sex dreams about Harry, but it was just played for fun, and they didn't actually make out or anything. So
Yeah, good
I just
good
can't
call
picture
not
that.
pursuing that one. Definitely. Will there ever be a definitive empty nest cultural reference guide?
No, A, because it doesn't have the fan base and sales potential, but also because Empty Nest wasn't as observant, I guess, as a show as Golden Girls was. It was more of the more typical sitcom of the 80s and early 90s, in that it was good and it was funny, but it wasn't like a cultural touchstone, and they weren't really trying to say something like the Golden Girls did. It wasn't groundbreaking, I guess.
Well,
So
yeah.
they didn't have nearly as many of the actual pop culture references as Golden Girls
Yeah, I don't
did.
think I heard any in any of the episodes I watched, and I feel like every Golden Girls episode has at least one. So
Oh yeah, more than one. I learned that when I was writing the book. There was not an episode that didn't. Even the flashback clip shows.
yeah, probably not enough for a book, but maybe a pamphlet so I can kill my sister over it. Uh, what made you want to write your Golden Girls book?
Because I had watched the show forever, and I would be like, "Oh, who was that person? Let me Google it or whatever." And I thought to myself, "Wouldn't it be cool if there was a book that just had all of this information together for us?" And then I thought, "Well, hell, why don't I just write it?"
I definitely am that person, being born while the show was on. I don't know who a lot of these people are that they're talking about. So I will pause it and, prior to the book, Google it so that it'll be funny to me so I'll understand. And I did used to say they need a book, so I don't have to look all this up. So when I heard on Enough Wicker that an actual book was coming out, I think I pre-ordered it immediately so that I can now understand every single reference. And like on the show the other day, I don't remember. Oh, Shinola. I was like, "What the hell is Shinola?" I bet it's in the book, and we both went and grabbed it, and we're like, "Oh, okay, now we get it." So I think it's the perfect companion piece for anyone that calls himself a Golden Girls fan. Thank you, Mother, for calling in
I
the middle of
know.
my show. No one else but her would.
There's always
Not
calling
now,
this.
Ma. But I definitely think that I have all the books. Probably, I've never cooked anything out of the cookbook, and much of this is just for show, as part of my
You have a
shrine.
problem.
I know, I do. Who are you to judge me? But this is a book you will actually use. Any other book, you might read fun facts and things like that, but you literally can use this, utilize it as you're watching the show. So I think that's what sets it apart. I'm looking around, I don't think there's any other Golden Girls book or item that you can literally use as you watch. Only
Hmm.
only thing that could be any different is if there was like a workbook, like, oh, give your thoughts about this episode and how do you feel, if it was like a class or something. But it literally is useful and not just, oh, let me add this to my collection. So I certainly appreciate it as a mega fan that you took this time. I don't know how you did it. It probably took you years, but certainly
Oh,
appreciate
I
it.
started during quarantine, so I was at home a lot and able to do that.
Ample time, definitely, to do something like that. But again, I don't think there are many references that have not been in here. There's one I tweeted you, but I don't remember what it was. Something little, but almost everything that I've looked up, I'm like, oh, it's in there. It's in there. It's
Yeah.
almost like a game of, oh, will it be in the book? And typically 9 times out of 10, it is. So
I've
definitely
been trying to
appreciate that.
remember the ones I've forgotten. I know I forgot Slinky.
I would assume everyone would know what a slinky is, but I guess they wouldn't. Not
They
everyone.
probably do, but even like Coca-Cola and like AT&T are in there, which we all know them. But then I thought, who am I to say we all know them, right?
Right.
Mm.
Well, that I
So when I
appreciate.
did the manuscript, I was like, well, the editors can take out what they don't think needs to be in there, but they didn't really take anything out.
Well, that's even better that because if it was my book, I wouldn't have included it. But that's good because not everybody does know what it is. I'm more so was like, what the hell is the PLO? Stuff like that that had me reaching for the book. So it's certainly one of my most used Golden Girls possessions. Maybe I need another one for me to actually look at because I feel like I have to have on gloves whenever I handle it. Especially if you sign it, I definitely am not going to want to do that. I still haven't read Rue McClanahan's book, and I've had it since like 2007 or something because I'm like, oh, I don't want to mess the pages up. So I may just have to get another one, and then that'll be my official one to use. But you will be at Goldencon with a booth, I believe.
I will be there. I get to do some stuff with Diana Manoff, which has me dancing around in joy.
You're like a kid in a candy store. So I am very excited to see all of this in person. Maybe I'll get to meet her. I don't know if that's on the that's on
Agenda.
the agenda. Yes, thank you. But I look forward to meeting you and all the Golden Girls fans. I feel like it's the who's who of Golden Girls, and everyone who's anybody will be there. Not to say that if you're not there, you're nobody. But hopefully we can all meet up and do some stuff together. And this will be a yearly thing. I don't know. But I definitely look forward to meeting you. I will be there with my book. Kay, I'm sure you're ordering yours right now, right?
I have three already that I've ordered. I'm waiting for all three
wonderful,
of them to get
wonderful.
there.
But I do want to thank you
I have no,
for
I
joining.
don't know how many to bring for the vendor table.
Never enough. As many as possible. I was saying, because they said I could have a table. I'm like, we don't sell anything. And I said, well, maybe I'll just bring my shrine. But in hindsight, I don't think I'm going to do all that. It looks like a lot of work. So maybe we'll think of something to sell. Maybe we can sell Too Ugly to Live signs to people, and they can either get it on the pearls or the chain.
Wow.
We're still brainstorming here. But we do definitely thank you for taking the time to come. I feel like you're Golden Girls fandom royalty. You know, you and Chris,
Absolutely.
so many people that I'm like, wow, they have time for our little show. So we certainly appreciate that. And you're welcome to come back anytime, even if you don't want to talk about Empty Nest. If you just want to, talk about Shinola or, various other things, you're certainly welcome. But did you have anything else you wanted to add before we let you go? This is probably like a 3-hour episode at this point.
No, I just want to say thank you for having me. Thank you for shining the light on Empty Nest. It doesn't always get the love it deserves, but I'm happy to be the one to introduce people to it.
I agree. It does not get the attention that it deserves, much like the toilets when Margarita's cleaning them. So I am definitely behind you. If you get a change.org petition or whatever, if you want to write President Biden, whatever you need, I support it. Now that I'm into the show, I'm sucked in, and YouTube is not sufficient. So
No.
We never got it on DVD either, and that technology's kind of passed. So
it's a crime.
Streaming. We got to get it on streaming.
I mean, I remember when they refused to get Golden Palace on there. Hopefully no one else has to die for this show to get on there. But at least, have you contacted Marsha Warfield? Have you heard from her?
I did an interview with her, but I haven't contacted her about this. But, she's back on TV now. She
Right.
has time for me.
Well, I think that's all the more reason. She's on 911 and, people are seeing her on TV again. We got to make this happen. I feel like we need to do this. But again, thank you for coming. And as I always say on every episode,
No.
thank you
for being a friend.
Wow. You just couldn't let me have it. Not even in front of Matt. All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with even more exciting guests. And soon we'll be in person with Matt, and you'll get to see that too. To all you image consultants, OK Petunias, and fancy men out there, don't forget to follow So Good We Named It on Instagram and Twitter at So Good We Named It. And check us out at the very first Golden Girls Convention, Goldencon, in Chicago, April 22nd through 24th. Go to thankyouforbeingafan.com for more information. And as always, thank you for being a friend.